It is a Thursday evening. You are standing in the grocery store, and the bin near the front door is piled high with corn. Green husks, brown silk, stacked up like they are giving it away. You grab 6 ears without thinking. You have done this 100 times. You get home, you boil a pot of water, you shuck the corn over the sink, and you find it. The kernels are pale, doughy. The rows are patchy, half-filled, with gaps where kernels should be. You bite into the first ear, and it is starchy.
Bland.
That sweet burst you were expecting, the one you remember from summer as a child, it is just not there. You eat it anyway because it is already cooked. You tell yourself the corn just was not very good this year. It is not the year. It is never the year. It is the ear. And you grabbed the wrong one every single time because nobody ever taught you what the right one looks like. There are 5 things written on the outside of every ear of corn that tell you exactly what is inside before you ever pull back a single leaf. And one of those 5 things, one sign that every Amish woman in Holmes County checks in about 3 seconds, is something that most people have never once been told to look for. Something that will tell you immediately whether that ear of corn is going to be sweet and full and worth eating, or starchy and pale and destined for the compost pile. I am going to show you all 5 today, in the order you check them, from the moment you reach into that bin to the moment you walk away with the sweetest corn in the pile. My name is Ruth Stoltzfus. I grew up Amish in Holmes County, Ohio. I shucked my first ear of corn when I was 4 years old, standing on a wooden step stool next to my mother at the kitchen sink. I have been picking corn ever since. And the women who taught me, my mother, my grandmother, the older women in our community who fed large families through every summer without a single wasted ear, they did not guess. They did not hope. They read the corn the way you read a face. Quickly, completely, without having to think about it. That reading is what I am handing you today. But first I need to tell you something that is going to make you a little angry. Because it made me angry the first time I really sat down and thought about it. Your grandmother knew how to pick sweet corn. I would bet my kitchen on it. Her mother knew. Every woman who ever stood at a farm stand or walked a cornfield at harvest time in this country before about 1975 knew exactly what to look for. This was not special knowledge. This was the kind of thing a mother taught her daughter while they were doing it, the way you teach someone to tie a knot or fold a cloth. You do it alongside them until their hands know. And then it stopped. In 1 generation it stopped. Because the farms turned into grocery stores, and the grocery stores wrapped the corn in plastic and put it in refrigerated cases, and nobody stood next to their mother in the field anymore. The store does not benefit from a careful shopper. A starchy pale ear of corn that disappoints you still got sold. You already handed over your money at the register. The Amish never stopped standing in the field. They never stopped teaching their daughters. And what they kept, I am giving to you right now. Here is the first thing you look at. Before you pick up a single ear. Before you touch anything. Look at the silk. The brown threads coming out of the top of the husk. Most people look at the silk and think, fresh corn has pale silk and old corn has brown silk, so I want the pale silky ones. That logic feels right. It is backwards. The silk on an ear of corn is connected to every single kernel on the cob. 1 silk thread per kernel. That thread carries the pollen from the tassel down to the kernel and tells it to develop. When pollination is complete, when every kernel on that cob has been reached, the silk dries out and turns brown. That is not a sign of age. That is a sign of completion. Brown silk that is dry and slightly papery at the tips means the corn finished developing. Every kernel got the signal it needed. The cob is full. Pale green or white silk means the corn was picked before the silk had time to dry. Before every kernel finished receiving its signal. What you will find inside that husk is a cob with gaps. Rows of kernels interrupted by blank spaces where the kernel never developed because the silk that was supposed to reach it never dried, never finished its job. I used to watch my mother walk past bin after bin of corn with pale, fresh-looking silk and reach for the ears with the dry brown silk at the top. As a girl, I thought she was picking the old ones on purpose. She was not picking the old ones. She was picking the finished ones. That single switch in how you look at silk will change every ear of corn you bring home for the rest of your life. Now pick the ear up. The first thing you feel is the weight and the firmness of the husk. A good ear of corn is heavy in your hand, and the husk is tight against the cob underneath. You can feel the cob through the layers. Firm, dense, packed. The kernels are pressing outward against the husk from the inside. An ear that feels light, or where the husk feels loose and papery, not tight and almost taut. That cob is not full. Either the kernels are underdeveloped, or the ear has been sitting long enough that it has started to dry out from the inside. Either way, it is not going to be sweet. Hold the ear and squeeze it gently in the middle. You should feel resistance. The cob should feel solid all the way through, not soft in spots, not hollow feeling near the tip. Solid and firm from end to end. Now run your hand down the length of the husk from top to bottom. You are feeling for bumps. Even regular, consistent bumps from top to bottom, right to the very tip of the ear. That is what full rows of kernels feel like, through the husk. The bumps should go all the way to the end without fading out or going flat near the tip. If the tip feels thin or flat under the husk, the kernels did not develop all the way to the end of the cob. That ear will look half-finished inside. You will peel back the husk at supper and find a pale, pointy tip with no kernels, just bare cob. Dry and worthless. Bumps all the way to the tip. Every time. That is a full ear. Now here is the one nobody talks about. The sign that I have never seen explained anywhere outside of the women who taught me. The one that separates the corn that is going to taste like summer from the corn that is going to taste like a grocery store. You're going to look at the base of the ear. Right where the husk meets the stalk end, the bottom of the ear. Look at the color of the husk right there at the very base. A freshly picked ear of corn, pulled from the stalk within the last day or two, has a base that is pale green, almost white, moist looking. The cut end of the stalk, if it is still there, should be pale and slightly damp. But that is not what you were looking for. What you were looking for is something else entirely. Press your thumbnail gently into a kernel through the husk near the base, just enough to feel what is underneath. And what you want to feel is plumpness, a fullness, a kernel that has pressure behind it like a small water balloon. That plumpness is the sugar water inside the kernel. A corn kernel at peak ripeness is full of liquid sugar. When you press it, it resists and then gives just slightly. Full of life. A kernel that feels hard under the husk, hard like a dried bean, that kernel has already converted most of its sugar to starch. The sweetness window has closed. That ear may look perfect on the outside. Inside it will be tough and bland. And a kernel that feels soft and mushy, no resistance at all, that ear is past its peak. The sugars have broken down too far. It will be watery and flavorless in a different way. Full and plump with just a slight give. That is the kernel you want. That is the sugar talking. My grandmother called this the squeeze test, and she did it without ever thinking about it. I watched her do it 1,000 times before I understood what she was actually checking. She was not squeezing for softness. She was squeezing for sugar. Now the husk itself. The color and the tightness of the outer leaves. A good ear of corn has outer husks that are deep, bright green. Not yellow-green, not pale, not starting to dry out at the edges. Deep green, that is almost waxy. The leaves should be tight to the cob, overlapping cleanly, not pulling away at the edges or starting to curl. Yellowing husks mean the ear has been sitting long enough for the outer leaves to start dying. The sugars inside are converting to starch as you look at it. That process starts the moment corn is picked from the stalk, and it does not stop. You cannot reverse it. You cannot ripen corn at home on the counter or in the refrigerator. What you see in that bin is what you are taking home. Deep green and tight. That is what fresh looks like. Yellow and loose is already on its way out. And here is the part that the grocery store display absolutely does not want you to know. Most grocery store corn was picked 2 to 4 days before you see it. In that time, depending on how it was stored, somewhere between 30 and 50% of the natural sugar in that corn has already converted to starch. The sweetness clock started ticking the moment it left the field. Which means your job at that bin is not just to find the best ear in the pile. It is to find the ear that lost the least. The one that was picked most recently, stored most carefully, and has done the least converting. The deep green tight husk, the plump kernels, the dry brown silk, the firm heavy feel, the bumps all the way to the tip. Every one of those signs points to the same thing. An ear that is still close to what it was in the field. An ear that has not given up much yet. That is the ear you take home. Now let me walk you through the whole check the way I actually do it, start to finish, in about 60 seconds per ear. I approach the bin. I am not grabbing randomly. I am scanning the silk first, looking for the dry brown tips. I am passing over the pale white and green silk immediately. I am pulling toward the ears where the silk has done its job. I pick up a candidate. I feel the weight. Heavy and firm, good. I run my hand down the length, bumps all the way to the tip, good. I look at the husk color. Deep green, tight, good. I do the gentle squeeze, near the base, through the husk. Plump, with just a little give, good. That ear goes in my bag. The whole check takes less time than it took me to describe it. After the third or fourth ear, you will not be thinking about the steps anymore. Your hands will just know. That is how my mother did it. That is how her mother did it. That is how every woman in my community did it at every farm stand every summer for as long as I can remember. It is not a special skill. It is a learned one. And you just learned it. Now, I want to tell you something about timing that matters as much as the picking. Corn is not like a watermelon. A watermelon, once it is ripe and you bring it home, will hold its sweetness for several days if you keep it cool. Corn will not wait for you. The moment corn is picked, the sugar starts becoming starch. At room temperature, that conversion is fast. Within 24 hours, you can lose half the sweetness. Cold slows it down, but does not stop it. The old rule in farming communities was that you put the water on to boil before you went out to pick the corn. You brought it from the stalk to the pot in under 10 minutes. That is not how grocery store corn works. That corn has already been on a truck, in a warehouse, in a refrigerated case. The conversion has been happening the whole time, which is why the signs I just gave you matter so much. You are not just picking the best ear, you are picking the one that still has something left to give. Cook it the same day you buy it if you can. If you cannot, keep it in the refrigerator with the husks on and cook it within 2 days. Every day you wait, the corn you bought gets a little further from the field and a little closer to the compost. My grandmother would not have understood buying corn 3 days before you planned to eat it. In her world, you grew it, you picked it, you ate it the same evening. The sweetness was so reliable, so consistent, so present in every ear that she never thought of it as special. It was just what corn tasted like. Most people alive today have never tasted corn the way she tasted it. They have only ever tasted corn that was already converting, already on its way from sweet to starchy, already giving up what it had. And they think that is what corn is. It is not what corn is. What corn is, a freshly picked ear of sweet corn boiled for 4 minutes and eaten with butter and a little salt on a warm August evening, is one of the best things this country grows. I am not exaggerating. I grew up eating it that way, and I have never stopped missing it. You may not be able to pick corn from your own field, but you can get closer to that ear than you think if you know what to look for, and you cook it the same day. Now here is my last word on this, and it is the one I want you to carry with you when you walk away from this video today. The knowledge I just gave you is not complicated. It is not secret in the sense of being hidden or coded or mysterious. It is just specific. And specificity is what got lost. Not the knowledge itself, just the precision of it. The difference between brown silk meaning old and brown silk meaning finished. The difference between a heavy ear and just any ear. The feel of a plump kernel through a husk versus a hard one. These are small distinctions, but they are the distinctions that matter. They are the ones your grandmother knew and her mother knew, and somewhere along the way just stopped being passed down because nobody was standing in the field together long enough to pass them. I am standing here right now, and I am passing them to you. That is the whole point of everything I do on this channel. Not to sell you something, not to convince you of anything, just to hand you the thing that somebody forgot to hand you. Now go find your corn. The sweet ones are out there. You just have to know what you are looking for. Tell me in the comments, did you know about the silk? Did you know about the squeeze test? And what does sweet corn mean to you? A memory, a summer, a person who used to make it a certain way? I read every single one. The stories are as important as the signs.